Iggy, have the global stock markets completely lost their minds lately? We have had a war in the Middle East raging for 2 months, yet the S&P 500 is sitting at fresh all-time highs like nothing is happening.
It is a curious thing to watch, Angela. While the index climbs, Brent crude has pushed past US dollars 107 per barrel, its highest point in years.
That is exactly what I mean. The headlines are full of fire and oil spikes, but my portfolio seems to be in a summer mood. Are investors just better at handling stress now, or are we collectively looking the other way?
Most are making a calculated bet on a quick resolution, conditioned by years of seeing geopolitical flares fizzle out. They see the resilience in tech margins and assume that energy shock is someone else's problem.
But surely US dollars 107 oil is everyone's problem eventually, right? If energy costs keep climbing, it has to eat into those strong tech profits we keep hearing about.
That is the illusion the market is currently buying into. The belief is that high margin services and artificial intelligence can somehow decouple from the physical reality of the power grid.
It feels like everyone is betting on a soft landing for a plane that is currently flying through a hurricane. If tech is the engine, is oil not the fuel that keeps the entire global operation running?
Precisely, and that is where the forensic math starts to dismantle the mainstream optimism. Investors are leaning on the taco train, the idea that Trump always steps back when the economic pain gets too intense.
I have heard that one, but is it not a bit dangerous to assume one person's predictable patterns can control a war involving Iran? Iran has a say in how this script plays out too, and they are not necessarily following that playbook.
That is the forensic sledgehammer right there, Angela. We are not just talking about a minor supply dip. We are looking at the potential for the greatest global energy security challenge in history.
That sounds like a quote from a disaster movie, not a financial report. Is it really that serious? Or is that just the International Energy Agency trying to keep everyone on their toes?
It came from Fatih Birol at the International Energy Agency, and the numbers support the alarm. Around 20% of the world's oil and 30% of internationally traded fertilizers transit the Strait of Hormuz.
Wait, 30% of the world's fertilizer? I knew about the oil, but I did not realize the Middle East held the keys to the global food supply like that.
It is the urea price that should be catching your eye. It is up more than 45% since the war began. This is not just an energy shock. It is a delayed fuse food crisis that will hit harvest yields 6 months from now.
So even if the war ended tomorrow, the damage to the planting season is already done. Why is that not reflected in the share prices of the big consumer companies?
Markets are notoriously bad at pricing duration risk, how long a disruption actually lasts. They see a conflict and assume it is a passing squall, ignoring the irreversible damage to infrastructure like Qatar's Ras Laffan LNG complex.
You mentioned Qatar. Did they not lose 17% of their production capacity in a single strike? If that takes 3 to 5 years to repair, how can anyone call this a temporary blip?
They cannot, yet the IMF's reference forecast still clings to a global growth target of 3.1%. Even their own chief economist admits that scenario was out of date the day it was released.
That is not very reassuring coming from the people who are supposed to be the global adults in the room. What does a severe scenario actually look like if Hormuz stays closed for another quarter?
Analysts have suggested oil could range anywhere from US dollars 99 to a catastrophic US dollars 372 per barrel. In that world, global growth drops to 2%, and many economies fall into a deep recession.
US dollars 372 for a barrel of oil would be devastating for a retail investor. You are saying the market is treating a 45% drop in indices like it is a 1970s relic that cannot happen today?
That is the consensus, yes. During the 1970s oil crisis, the Dow Jones lost 45% of its value in under 2 years while inflation ran wild simultaneously.
But our economy is different now. We have renewables, electric vehicles, and we are far more energy efficient than we were 50 years ago. Does that not give us a shield the 1970s generation did not have?
It provides a thinner shield than you might think. While it takes less energy to produce $1 of GDP now, our supply chains are infinitely more complex and reliant on precision timing.
This all feels a bit abstract when I am looking at my SGX dashboard. Can you bring this down to earth with something a bit more local?
Think of the global energy market like the planning committee for our MRT fare hikes. Everyone knows the cost of electricity is rising, but for months your EZ-Link tab still shows the same old price.
Right? Because the government or the operators are absorbing the hit for a while to keep the peace. It feels like nothing has changed until the day they suddenly announce a double-digit jump.
That is the denial phase we are in right now. The stock market is the commuter who thinks fares will never go up just because they have not moved in the last 60 days.
So the market is just enjoying the ride while the global economy is quietly bleeding cash behind the scenes. Eventually, the fare hike has to happen to cover the fuel bill.
Exactly, and in this metaphor, the fuel is the US dollars 107 Brent crude and the 45% urea spike. The operators can only absorb those costs for so long before they pass the bill to the passengers.
And those passengers are the listed companies whose earnings are about to get squeezed. But if everyone knows the hike is coming, why are they still piling into the train?
Because they think they can jump off at the very last station before the new fares kick in. They believe they are faster than the news cycle, but duration risk means the tracks might already be damaged.
You mean even if the fare hike is announced, the trains might not even be running properly because of the underlying damage, like the 3-year repair timeline for that LNG complex you mentioned?
That is the structural fracture. If the Strait of Hormuz is the main tunnel for the entire MRT line and it has been blocked for 2 months, you cannot expect a smooth commute the day it reopens.
So the market denial is not just about the price of the ticket, it is about the fact that the entire network is being degraded. We are sitting in the station waiting for a train that has no way to get to us.
And the investors bidding up technology stocks are ignoring the fact that there are no passengers coming to buy anything. They are valuing the vending machine while ignoring the empty platform.
It sounds like the wallet impact here is not just about a dip in the index, but a fundamental shift in how we have to protect our capital.
It means your 4.7% yield hurdle is no longer a suggestion. It is the minimum requirement for survival. If your portfolio is yielding less than that, while oil sits at US dollars 107, you are effectively paying for the privilege of losing money.
Looking at my SGX holdings, I see Sembcorp Industries is currently benefiting from a war premium in power margins. But you are saying that is a thesis with a shelf life that could expire the moment the macro shock turns into a recession.
Correct. Sembcorp's current margins are a shield, but if Brent sustains its move and eats into global demand, that shield turns into a weight. Monitor whether their power margins contract while fuel costs stay elevated.
And then there is DBS yielding around 5.3% at current prices, which still clears your hurdle. But if a stagflation scenario hits, can they really maintain a 74.6% payout ratio when businesses start defaulting?
That is why I watched the fully phased-in CET1 ratio of 14.8% so closely. That figure sits just 30 basis points above the regulatory floor, a gap of only 210 basis points separating the headline transitional ratio from the true long-term capital buffer. That gives very little room to maneuver if the Iran war forces a regional credit crunch.
So my Fortress Bank might have a hairline crack I did not see because I was too busy looking at the yield. If I want to stay safe, I should be looking for high yields backed by even higher capital buffers.
You should be looking for sanctuary assets that do not care about the price of urea or Brent crude. In a world of US dollars 150 oil, a guaranteed return in a fortress currency is the ultimate defensive play.
It is a lot to take in. What are the 3 forensic findings I should be taking away from this Middle East situation?
First, watch US dollars 100 Brent as your primary war premium indicator. If oil stays above that level, while stocks hit new highs, the divergence signals that the market is mispricing how long this disruption lasts. Second, audit any energy-sensitive holdings for an interest coverage ratio below 4x. Rising fuel costs will compress margins, and those with thin coverage will be the first to buckle at the 2027 debt wall. Third, treat your 4.7% yield hurdle as a mandatory filter. Anything yielding less is failing to compensate you for the tail risks of a global stagflation shock.
That is Iggy's forensic take. Full breakdown is live on Substack for Iggy's elite investors, and the quick text land on Telegram first. Links are in the description. See you in the next one.
This content is produced for educational and informational purposes only. I am not a financial advisor. I am a retail investor who applies forensic analysis to my own portfolio and shares that process publicly. Nothing here constitutes a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any security, and no specific target prices or personalized financial advice are offered. All data is sourced from public filings and verified sources. Where data is unverified, it is explicitly flagged. All investments carry risk, including the potential loss of principal, and past performance is not indicative of future results. If you are making investment decisions involving CPF, SRS, or personal capital, please conduct your own due diligence or consult a MS licensed financial advisor before committing funds.